Easy money corrupts, and really easy money tends to corrupt. Absolutely. Do you think they were really earning this money from this mortgage trading? Are you really earning money when you put something on your balance sheet that really isn't there? When you reach for it, will fade away like mist? The accountant is like the referee in soccer. The accountants utterly failed us. Who but a nutcase would have that kind of an accounting system? What the hell were they thinking? I think we're lucky the system has worked as well as it has. If you're in a miasma of competition, and to use the word that is so popular, greed, you attract very competitive people, and they're thrown into this miasma. Of course, there's going to be more regrettable behavior than you might find in a monastery, or at least than we thought we might find in monasteries before we understood them better. And so, of course, Wall Street is going to have more regrettable behavior. You know, Lord Acton had this law that you all taught, that power corrupts and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. Well, the Munger version of that is that easy money corrupts, and really easy money tends to corrupt absolutely. And I don't think it was good for Wall Street that they had this absolute torrent of really easy money when idiots and knaves were making a fortune selling shoddy mortgages with ridiculous theories. And it was very regrettable behavior. And it was the easy money that allowed it. And of course, the adults who could have fixed it, like the accountants, who had ridiculous standards, without which a lot of the bad behavior wouldn't have worked. The accountants utterly failed us. And by the way, there's practically no sign of any intelligent reversal of that failure of that profession. I have yet to meet many accountants who are the least bit ashamed for their contribution to our recent troubles, but it was immense. Imagine when Enron comes down to the SEC and says, we want to write a little contract with A and a little contract with B and take all the profit we're going to make from these complicated contracts over the next 20 years into earnings immediately and put an asset on our balance sheet of $28 million from signing 2 pieces of paper. And the SEC, led by wonderful accountants that had studied in great places, why, of course you should have that kind of accounting. What the hell were they thinking? How could anybody have any respectable understanding of human nature without realizing that the kind of people who are going to be tempted by that accounting were not going to be able to resist the temptations? It was disgusting. And they're not ashamed yet.
So
how many people have you heard lately talk about how ashamed our accountants ought to be at our recent troubles? Nobody's blaming them. They assume it's like addition. It isn't like addition. The system of accounting for the bad debts of banks is carefully set up so at the top of every boom, the bad debt rate goes to 0. Who but a nutcase would have that kind of an accounting system? I mean, I'm not making this as a joke. This is not a parody. These are the accepted accounting principles of your nation. Well, partly the establishment accountants want to please the people who are writing the checks. And partly the academic accountants get full of people who've overdosed on mathematics, and they want everything to be in balance. And they don't think that that really isn't rational in creating rules for a human behavioral system. They're too mathematical and not rational enough in dealing with their fellow humans. You can't give the average Wall Street CEO really lenient standards of accounting and expect the figures to be good. The accountant is like the referee in soccer. The accountant has to be the adult that prevents the mayhem. The accountants don't want to be the adults because it causes liability, it causes responsibility, it's difficulty in life, they have to be good at things they're not sure they know. There are a lot of reasons why they shrink from it. But it's their duty under God, and they failed us terribly.
That makes it
we lost the referee.
That makes it sound like those CEOs are inherently bad people, that they won't follow the rules themselves unless there's someone there with a stick to beat them back in line.
Well, I do think the CEO culture is likely to promote people who are very competitive and very driven and very aggressive at accomplishing what they want to do. And that means if the guy down the street is doing something that enables him to report more, they want to be like the guy down the street. They can't help themselves. They're that competitive. I don't believe in being that competitive. I believe it's part of human merit to know, like Kipling, you don't lose your head when everybody else is losing theirs. If somebody else makes a lot of money or reports a lot of money, let them. You know, it's this envy thing. It's pernicious, and it has caused a huge problem and a huge danger for our republic to have all these people competing to report phony earnings. Do you think they were really earning this money from this mortgage trading? Look at the write-offs. Are you really earning money when you put something on your balance sheet that really isn't there? When you reach for it, will fade away like mist? What the hell kind of a system is that? It's an utterly irresponsible system. And you can't blame the miscreants as much as you can the adults whose duty it was to prevent the miscreancy. Somebody said you can't blame the tiger for behaving like a tiger. You got to have a gamekeeper.
Does that mean we should also look at Washington and the regulators?
Well, if you think the accountants behave poorly, Washington set a new record. I have a rule for politics, which has served me well in making predictions, and that I quit claim to you. The politicians are never so bad you don't live to want them back.
So all of the drama that we've watched unfold over the last 2 years, all of Washington's attempts to try and figure out what happened and to prevent it from happening again, you think it's all been for naught?
No. What we have is way better than nothing. In particular, if you take the rules, which most people in my political party object to, for making the commercial banks behave a little better in dealing with fiscaholics who can't really handle things like checking accounts. Well, I think all politicians tend to behave badly under the peculiar pressures of their trade. So I think they've chosen a profession where it's hard to behave well. If it's hard to behave well and you're in a miasma of wrong incentives, so you get a lot of bad behavior. I think we're lucky the system has worked as well as it has. In my state, we have a thoroughly gerrymandered legislature. So if you have to be an extreme nut on the right or an extreme nut on the left, or you're not allowed in the legislature. And there are 10 sane people that creep in every decade. At the end of the decade, the right and the left agree and throw them out. And this is the biggest state and the biggest country. This is a very, very regrettable set of circumstances. How well are you going to behave in that kind of a system? You get so you hate the other people in your chamber. You need this ever-growing tide of money. You can't really tell the truth as it is because you'll offend various people that are important to you. It's a miracle it ever worked as well as it did. I suppose it's better than absolute despotism, but sometimes it's a little close.